You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
Oh, I was drinking coffee. I'm still SavageMick.
And in the depths of midwinter, we're here to talk about the fallen. Those dead games that have been withdrawn from publication, that lie fallow within the IP vaults, but at the hands of players, they live again. We speak of the undead games.
I have a number for somebody you should call and talk to about that. But yeah, I ain't dead. I'm still alive. I'm right. I'm ready to go. I don't need no corporate overlords and no expansions. I'll be fine. Me and my players, we'll be grand. That is the voice of the little game who could return from the grave. Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, and one we've kind of been talking around in the background for a while. While you're better known, Hida, as the backer of new things, the connoisseur of Kickstarter. That's not to say that you simply discard these darlings as soon as you have feasted on their husks. No, you have another identity, a man who prowls the necropolis, who cracks open tombs and discovers, oh, they're actually stuffed with people enjoying games that are no longer supported, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. There's a lot of games that get abandoned and they get shut down, and maybe there's a new edition, or maybe the publisher's just not interested in paying the license fee to that expensive IP anymore, and the game goes kaput. But the gaming police can't come round and take your old games off you. It's not like you can't delist them from Steam. You can't, burn all the ROMs to the ground. You can't fragment all the tape. The cards, the books, they're still out there.
I feel like that's got to age badly.
Well,
but you're right. Yeah, it's
you can't take my cards away from me. I still have my cards.
We don't need no permission. We're having fun.
Absolutely. And if you look at any big CCG that's dead, you'll find a player-run community that is still producing new cards for it. Because unlike an RPG, which will often feed off the GM or the player group creating new content themselves, a CCG requires new cards periodically to remain interesting. Otherwise, it often becomes a solved system. So they need to make new cards, and there's often like IP stuff still going on. So if you want to, the Decipher-based Star Trek CCG, you can go find the continuing community, and they were putting out cards 3 days ago. Here's some new. Here's a bunch of new cards.
Amazing. I think it's really important to point out a couple of things. Yes, you can take any game that's been abandoned or it's no longer published and play it. Fine. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of games. They can sit in the shelf forever and come down, and as long as no one has eaten any particular parts of them, looking at you, boy, tell that story another time. Yeah, you can just start playing. But specifically, we're talking about those games that are lucky enough to have a fan base that is rabid enough to go, we're making more of this, I don't care whose permission I don't want or need, and then are able to access the production capacity to do so. Because, and not to mention, there's a community that provides the consensus for, is this going to be part of the continuity? If we're releasing new cards, will everyone agree that these cards are legit and that we'll play with them? So I think it's fascinating to think about this outside of what you might do at your gaming group. Rather, you're plugging into an existing community that has got some clout, has got some tastemakers, consensus, has got some adjudicators, more on that later, and increasingly is finding production capacity to make new stuff for old games. So what form did these Star Trek people release these new cards in? Digital files or something else?
For the most part, they just do digital files because it's still got the original branding and IP on it. Now, some of the time, what they'll do is they will use production stills and other stuff back behind the scenes photos for cards, or they'll pay artists for custom art. But some of these games use photo art, so that was an issue for them. So they use either production stills, they use behind the scenes shots, or sometimes they go and they use computer generated imagery, or nowadays AI based imagery to produce the art for their cards.
I was wondering when that would come into the conversation. Yeah, okay.
And so the additional wrinkle on one of these is if the game isn't attached to its IP anymore, you can actually sell stuff based on this. Right?
Wait, elaborate on that one.
So let's say you have Netrunner. Netrunner is the big example I'd use here. Okay? You can't copyright game mechanics. You can copyright the names of game mechanics, but you can't copyright game mechanics. You can say tap is copyrighted. No other game can use tap. But you cannot copyright the concept of turning a card 90 degrees to indicate that its ability has been used. You cannot do that. You are not allowed. So there are games being produced for Netrunner by a group called Null Signal, which are making a basically System Gateway was their base set for Null Signal. And it is everything you need to play Netrunner. And you can buy that set. Between POD options and printing through stuff like drive-through cards, you can buy and print that set and then use it.
The drive-through cards?
This is drive-through RPG has a print-on-demand system, but you can just buy, like, you can go on to Null Signal Games and you can buy the core set of their Netrunner game, which is not Netrunner, but it is on the box compatible with Netrunner because it is. It doesn't use the same names in terms of the setting. The setting is not the same, but like that's what it is, you know.
Pretty easy to map your understanding, and presumably compatible with any official, or roughly compatible with any official Netrunner stuff you might still have lying around.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And but that, I think, is the beauty of it.
They still have corps. They still have runners. You can play the game. It's the same game. Because certain things weren't copyrighted, and that's what's being used. Because you got to remember that Netrunner was licensed off originally Cyberpunk by WotC, and then the mechanics got licensed by FFG. Well, and the idea of it, and they used the name Netrunner, and they tweaked some stuff, and then these guys have just picked up the mechanics.
It went from a collectible card game to a what was the new model? Legacy card game? No, not collectible. What did they do when they released? There was box sets with fixed sets of cards in them.
LCGs, living card games.
Living card games. That's the
now one. Living card games is copyrighted. You can't have living card games because one company tried to call their game a living card game and very quickly got told, "Sorry, that's copyrighted. You have to call it something else instead." So they have to call it, other people use stuff like Eternal card game or basically whatever,
I think we all know what's happening here. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
And it has found or it's maintained a player base that are accessing this stuff. How do they agree on sets? How do they agree on what's going to go in a new set?
They've got a design team. And that's basically these guys have agreed this is who's in charge, this is who's doing stuff, and they're basically building it based on that. They will have had traditionally it's experienced players or wannabe designers for the community come together, work on the stuff, because it's a lot of writing rules and basically doing graphic layout. It's not like this is not necessarily easy stuff to do or cheap stuff to do. So there's often a lot of work on this, but certain things have been made easier. Like one of the problems with making a CCG was you would be paying 50 to 250 euros usually per art piece for your cards. And that's not the cheapest. So the increasing amount of AI produced art there is often being used I can still have art it is AI art. It's not great from terms of, employment opportunities for artists. But if I'm not selling anything, at least then, I'm just making it. There's art on this one. It's closer to being morally neutral than taking the crust out of a starving artist's mouth, because you'd rather pay nothing to or pay a subscription fee to an AI art service instead.
No comment. as fitting in both of those camps on occasion.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's better than, you're not making money off it. So I'm kind of like, okay, no one's making money here. You're putting time and effort into doing this thing. You can't afford to pay an artist, so you're doing this instead. Okay, as long as nobody's making money, it's all right. It's when it's taking money away from an artist, I get a little bit squirty.
Is it fair to call these sort of player cooperatives the various kind of bodies that keep these games alive? Because I really want to use that for the episode title.
Yeah, you can absolutely use it. The one issue with it is, it's usually the decision is made about who's in charge by activity within the community. But there's always a bit of, the fights can be vicious when the stakes are so low. Right. And
you decide your level of involvement in project.
I couldn't tell you about why certain people are in charge versus not in charge. I do remember when the Transformers CCG first they stopped publishing it by WotC. There was like 2 or 3 different contingency groups formed immediately, and were each producing their own next set. So that's always kind of like, okay, so we'll wait and see who wins out over this one, who goes the longest, or who is the best. And it's always kind of funny watching that one happen. So with the older games, it's generally coalesced into one group as they lose momentum. But there's
presumably
generally
first to publish, and then is it any
absolutely
good?
First to publish, quality. Like these guys doing Netrunner, they're doing very well. It's interesting, some of their stuff, because it is very like what they're using some of the same symbols, which is interesting. But yeah. It's clearly okay, or at least they haven't been they haven't been taken out yet. So that's the thing. Like they're at, these guys are at PAX. They're doing well. They're producing their stuff. Good on them. Good on them.
Kind of reminds me of the concept of soft companies from Slay Industries. These kind of guys who live in the margins and the cracks. They're demi official. Maybe not really. It's sort of like a knockoff, sort of like a homage. But let's move on to printing card is fine and relatively accessible these days. But let's move on to the topic that's going to allow you to write down some of that plastic as a business expense. And I am, of course, talking about your newfound love for an old game. Of Rolling Bones.
So weirdly enough, this comes out of the Highlander. The Highlander CCG was produced by, at one point for ages, a lone guy in a garage printing cards in his own setup and selling them in tiny little sets, still releasing stuff. And he was still he still had this license in perpetuity. That old bone of, we can still make this thing. And he had this license to continue producing Highlander cards. And he was selling Highlander cards, and they decided to do a Kickstarter because it's a bit of an nostalgia rush for old 90s card games and similar. And he decided to do a Kickstarter, at which point I think one of the licensing companies noticed he still had this license and went, what the hell's up with this? And it was withdrawn. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I said, I wonder what other games are still being produced, actually technically produced by, what other licenses around like that. And I had to have a look around the internet. And then I remembered, wait a minute, Dragon Dice. I remember seeing ads for Dragon Dice in Arcane magazine in the mid-90s, when I used to buy Arcane magazine, and I found Conspiracy X and Deadlands and other classic games like that. And I saw these ads for Dragon Dice, and I was like, I never played Dragon Dice. I don't know what it's like. I remember at Gen Con actually a few years ago, they had a stand. Why did they have a stand? I thought they're selling an old product. Okay, weird, whatever. And then I went, okay, I'll do a bit of research about Dragon Dice and go see what it is. I went and I read the rules, and I went, holy hell, there's some great ideas in this game. And I went and I looked, and there's a company, SF4, which is still making Dragon Dice. And I went, huh. Well, then I'm going to buy myself a starter. And I bought myself a little collection of dice I sent over. They shipped it over to me. Took about kind of 3 weeks a month to get to me. And I cracked it open, and I had a grand old time playing with it. And I bought
Let me get
2
this
more
straight.
orders since
Hold
then.
on. So
Yeah.
they're still releasing original sets,
Yes.
and they're making new sets,
Yes.
and they're printing some stickers and putting them on little wooden
No,
dice.
no. It's a
happy little thing.
The
And
dice
it's all
are
jolly and cottage core. No,
the dice are the same dice. They're basically they are injection molded dice with painted, recessed painted symbols on each side. They are, relatively speaking, high end dice, particularly for the early to the mid 90s, which is when it came out. Because this came out from the bones of TSR and is one of the contributing factors in TSR's downfall. Because TSR noticed that Magic the Gathering was doing incredible. We're making Spellfire and said we need to dominate the next one of these. And a guy called Lester Smith came up with an idea for Dragon Dice, which is effectively a war game played with collectible dice, played on a tabletop in a relatively small space, and came up with this idea, put together the game. The game is good. They produced a base set. It sold with 4 armies in it. It sold incredibly well. They did a second set with monsters, D10 sized monsters for each existing army, and the Amazons as a new army. And that sold incredibly well. And they ordered a ridiculous amount for the second set, Firewalkers.
fill the warehouse.
Filled the warehouse, and then it went out, and the sales weren't what they could be because this is the first time it was one army in a box set, not multiple armies in a box set. So it didn't do as well. And TSR had a disastrous policy left over from the days when it just sent their stuff to little mom and pop gaming shops where you could return your stock for a full refund. Except the CCG market just collapsed for a bunch of reasons. So all their stuff got returned to them. And this is stuff like thousands and thousands of boosters from places like Borders suddenly went back.
Uh-oh.
And they were on the hook for tons. And this involves also sending back stuff like the D&D encyclopedia, which did not do terribly well either. So when I bought my boosters of this game from SF4, all of the boosters are in their new packaging, with the exception of the Firewalkers, which are still in the original TSR packaging. Because they still have TSR boosters to sell from 1995.
Okay. It's a fairly unique set of circumstances that have kind of kept this game this high. Like folks, I tend to batter on about production processes, but casting custom dice has got to be one of the more expensive things you can do in the gaming hobby. Even today, I mean, just the idea of trying to 3D print this just doesn't fly. You've got to have spin or hot plastic injection molding stuff, and this is ridiculously expensive to do. We're talking like 6 to 10 grand per injection mold die.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, I think it's slightly cheaper than that because they've run some Kickstarters to reprint some of the factions, because what happened was WotC were making this. Oh no, so TSR were making this. WotC took over and produced effectively one more set and then shuttered it, scrapping a lot of the dice in the process. And what had happened towards the end of the run was, to try and book up the numbers, there was always within the dice all the dice were flat rarity, apart from the monsters. And in the last two sets, which were Frostwings and Scalders, that was the last two armies they produced. They changed the rarity on some of the units to make some of the more valuable units short printed, so you had to collect more.
Right.
And that severely damaged the viability of the game because players got found out and got really annoyed. And what happened then was when they were doing TSR get bought by WotC. And WotC are like, okay, we'll make one more set of this game. And then WotC get bought by Hasbro. And Hasbro go, you need to get all these underperforming games off your books because we're just loading you up with debt from buying you. So Hasbro had to get rid, or WotC had to get rid of Elvor, a bunch of other games, and they couldn't find anyone to buy Dragon Dice. So, because it was seen as being a bit of a lemon at this point. So they were preparing to dumpster the entire thing, where a guy came in and bought it at fire sale prices and said, I want to buy this. I don't want your stock. I want your stock. I want your molds. And I want a license in perpetuity to print these.
Passionate about the game.
So he got that. And for example, I bought some of the Lava Elves, who are the fire and death based elf army. And their monster list includes the Beholder and the Drider. And they're still allowed to call them a Beholder and Drider. They have a license to.
Interesting.
So I got some Beholders, I got some Driders. I'm like, okay, cool. And the game is supported by a pretty small community at this point, and they did a recent Kickstarter which didn't succeed. They're going to retool it and for doing a brand new army and try to get it going again. And they have to print the molds basically. Once you get the molds made, you just inject in plastic stuff. So it's not break the bank expensive.
Right.
But they've had to do new molds for some stuff to be able to print them again. Like they had to do new molds for Amazons because Amazons were done originally in molds along with all the monsters. So to do that again, they were like, okay, we need to do new Amazon. And we need to do new Scalders molds and new Frostwing molds, basically. So they've been doing new molds to kind of adjust the rarities. And one like Scalders don't have a new molds yet, so they still use one of these dice is much rarer than the others. And basically, will they may eventually fix that if they can run a Kickstarter for. So they're still using the original molds. They're still printing dice. It's servicing a small community, but the game is still on the go, and they've basically honed the rules. They've got it into a good state rules wise, and it's great. It's still going. I was playing. I was going. There's a ton of great ideas in this game that people haven't taken up about, and the joy of going. This is a small footprint tabletop war game that doesn't take an hour to set up and play. You can set it up and play it in minutes. So it's refreshing from. I love setting up terrain and moving a skirmish game around or anything like that, but the ability to just go, yeah, I'll just set this up in 15 minutes, or I'll set this up and play it in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour is, great.
Would you say there's any scope for something like this to happen again?
At this, someone can come up with an idea and basically strike fire with it. The issues around the game, the reason why it failed, then there were a bunch of reasons why it failed. It basically being around at the same time as Magic, and then the CCG collapse, the first CCG collapse, was really what did it a lot of damage. And after that, it's got a lot of RNG in it. You're rolling dice. Now, you can account for a lot of that with your army construction, but you are rolling dice. You can get blown out by a super good roll, or you can be ruined by a series of terrible rolls. But the game's quick to play. It's just play another game. It's fine from that point of view. Could someone else come along and make a new game? So many games come along are licensed now that if the game is to survive, the core gameplay has to be so good that it can live without the IP. And people are willing to basically completely rebuy or reprint or get a brand new base set or nearly rebuy all the cards. And Netrunner was mechanically strong enough to do that for some players. And your game would have to be incredibly mechanically strong, robust, and fun to play on its own without your game has to be enough without the license to survive nowadays, because most of them have a license attached to them. But I'm shocked. Like Warlord Saga of the Storm, the basic kind of D20 style CCG is coming back next year. I think it's coming on Kickstarter. So there's definitely a nostalgia market for people going, oh, I want to go back and play that game again that I used to play when I was 15 and irresponsible. This time I can buy all the stuff.
Or potentially I can knock on the IP holder's door and go, right, give me your molds, or your PSD files or whatever. Okay, it'd probably be, it's germane to mention a company that have left an awful lot of games go by the wayside, that have had the following to pick them up again. I am, of course, referring to Games Workshop and a lot of their specialist line of games. The one this topic brings to mind, of course, is the venerable punching people and taking their ball board game of years past, Blood Bowl, which has sort of been through this kind of process, and I think it's officially sport at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, it's on the go at the moment. They have made new teams, some of which were based on kind of community developed teams like Bretonians and they've just reissued Vampires.
Yeah,
and they've toned down what made Vampires bad, so they might actually be decent to good. So like, and there's a massive 3D printing. Like the 3D printing explosion is one of the things that really helps with this, where if people can use a resin printer, they can print their stuff at home in a way that they couldn't. So they had to rely on resin printing being done at a Kickstarter, which is always a slightly dubious because of how fragile resin can be. And it's
shipping isn't going to be generous to that sort of material. Now, of course, you can just sell the STL files. I suppose Blood Bowl had the distinction of, was the original designer weighed in on a lot of the living rulebook days when it was out in the hinterland unsupported.
Yeah, Jervis Johnson helped out a lot. And one of the things he did actually for Epic was that when Games Workshop were kind of like, okay, we're not going forward with the edition of Epic really after they did Apocalypse, and then they were kind of like, okay, well, we're the next one. Jervis Johnson sent out, here's what we'd worked up so far. It's yours now. Get to work on it. And there was a huge community support thing. Now, the problem with it is, and I'll tell you the problem with most of these community games, is ultimately the player counts drop and drop, because it's much harder to onboard people into a game like that where there isn't a big footprint in the shop or online to find people. You're relying kind of on word of mouth and existing communities to recruit people in. And while the community stays strong, you can keep that going. But inevitably the numbers tend to go down and down and down, because even the NetEpic guys were saying that their numbers were going down and down and down. But Legions Imperialis coming out ticked back up the interest, despite being a completely different rule set and a different setting, even 30k versus 40k.
I believe it might even be in a slightly different scale.
It is. It's
which is a real jerk move, if you ask me.
8 mil-ish, close. Like the Marines are about 10 mil tall, but about 8 mil-ish. But like you can argue about what size, like the scales of dozens of competing minorly different scale. Somebody just said, look, it's just Z scale. It's just
stick some tactical rocks under your old epic scale stuff. They'll be fine. Yeah, it's so. I suppose I think it's a curious half-life that some of these games enjoy, requiring a confluence of factors. Perhaps the IP comes up for purchase at as you say, fire sale prices, with the attendant rights and production capacity and all the rest. Sometimes you just need a community who are so damn thirsty for more that they'll just go and make their own with blackjack and poppers. Who knows? And sometimes, if it bubbles along with enough input from the original creators, then eventually the companies involved will sort of prick up their ears and go, "Oh, there's still some blood in that stone. Well, I guess we better rehash it in such ways we can make some money. But yes, I think it's fair to say that in all these cases, what it really requires is a passionate player base who are still interested in the game at some level. I want to see it succeed.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in a game of Dragon Dice, come find me at any convention. I'll pull some dice.
You'll have the bag ready to go.
I will have the bag ready to go.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. And of course, the best place to arrange all of that, folks, is on our Discord. If you check the show notes for a link, I'm sure you'll find it there, where we like to keep the party going, discussing all manner of things. We're in the run-up to the end of the year now, so be sure to check in. We've got an extra special episode coming up on December the 24th, which is going to be our bumper Christmas special, at which point we're going to take a couple of weeks break from normal schedule, but we promise that we're going to pack that episode with all sorts of things to tide you over the holiday period. But I think until then, this party's over. Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.